That is, when looking towards the sun, they say, the stars are further on. Some stars they see are, so they say, 500 million miles away.
What? Oh, fuck, you're boring.
He is coming. Cover your butt.
The flat earth has a big problem. Well, it has a lot of problems, but one in particular stands out. According to modern scientific understanding, light travels an infinite distance. This means that we can see objects that are very, very far away. This is why we can see stars that are billions of light years away from us. There are some limiting factors to light, like having things in front of them. But once these factors are taken away, there is really no limit as to how far away you can see. There is a limit to your eye's ability to resolve an image, but that's an entirely different subject. This is a big problem for flat earthers because if we can see an unlimited amount of distance, then there's a lot of things that we should be able to see that we can't. But do not worry, Nicole has found a very old pamphlet from the scientists of yore who are going to explain to us why we can't see as far as we think we can.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole Cote, and in today's video I'm going to be reading this article titled Sight and Limitations Equal in Every Direction by Zeteo, which is a combination of people, Lady Blount, FRSL, FNBA, and these other people who I'm not really sure, but...
Oh yes, some great sources you got there. Some people I don't even know. Because we all know that the best sources for scientific knowledge are people that you find in a pamphlet who you cannot reliably tell who they are. I bet this is going to be full of lots of great science.
This actually starts off with a poem, and I'll just begin.
Yes, because all great scientific papers start with poetry. Now don't get me wrong, I like poetry. It serves its purpose well, which is to entertain. You know what poetry is not good at? Poetry is not good at science. There's a reason why we separate science from literature. They serve different functions. This just really goes to show you the level of quality of the pamphlet that Nicole is going to read to us.
Human sight is limited and equal in every direction, when there are equal conditions and possibilities. Most people would agree to this proposition at first sight, but if you think of the results of the application of the principle, atmospheric differences and variations in different directions cause the sight to be curtailed or cut short of its full length of view.
Flat earthers have had to come up with this excuse that your eyesight is limited to help explain why we can't see distant objects. For example, if the Earth is flat, there should be nothing stopping us from seeing the Rocky Mountains from Chicago, or from seeing the islands of Hawaii from the shores of California. Even closer landmarks should still be visible. There is absolutely no reason why on a flat Earth you can't see the island of Cuba from the southern tip of Florida. But, because this is just an excuse rather than a prediction made by a model, this excuse has a lot of problems. So why don't we do something fun here today, and let's actually make a model using what Nicole is telling us, and see what kinds of predictions we should expect.
Human sight is limited and equal in every direction.
Alright, simple enough. Here I am in the middle, and we'll give myself a big circle of where I can see. So this diagram shows the limits of my vision. Now I made it a circle because she said in all directions, and this will play a big role later on. Already, we have a problem. Most flat earthers would place the distance that we can see at somewhere around 30 miles. The reason for this is pretty obvious. Besides a few exceptions, there are very few structures that we can see at 30 miles away. Most structures aren't tall enough for us to see over the curve of the Earth, which means that for the most part, if you have a tall building, at 30 miles away, it is probably being hidden behind a curve. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but in general, this is where a lot of flat earthers will place this distance. The problem then arises when we start looking at celestial bodies like the sun, the moon, and the stars. The problem here is that we can see these objects that are very clearly not 30 miles away. On any flat earth model, the distance to the stars must be at the very minimum equal to the radius of the Earth. Anything shorter than this, and these objects could easily be reached by anyone on Earth. This means that objects like stars cannot be a few miles away. They must be at least a few thousand miles away. And so we have arrived at our first conundrum. If celestial bodies like the stars, the moon, and the sun are thousands of miles away, this means that at the very minimum, we can see thousands of miles away. This, of course, is a problem when you're on the ground, when you can't see things like the island of Cuba from Key West. You should be able to, if we can see thousands of miles away. There should be absolutely no reason that we cannot see Havana from Key West. But if we cannot see Havana from Key West, a mere 90 miles away, just because of atmospheric whatevers, then there's absolutely no reason why we should be able to see the moon and the sun and the stars, which are thousands of miles away. Of course, with a little bit of special pleading, Nicole is going to have an answer to this question.
But although the possibilities of human sight are equal both vertically and horizontally, and also betwixt these two at every point, it is usually more or less cut short horizontally rather than vertically. When there are no solid obstructions such as buildings, hills, trees, etc., even then smoke, vapors, mists, etc. refract the light. Humidities in the air, as well as the eye's nearness to the earth, all prevent the full possibilities of sight horizontally.
So thanks to a little bit of special pleading, we are somehow more limited in sight horizontally than we are vertically. Why this difference exists, I don't know. Nicole's pamphlet claims that it's because of smoke and vapors and humidities, whatever the fuck humidities are, that limit the eyesight horizontally. Of course, these vapors, smoke, and humidities also exist on the vertical axis, therefore making me wonder why one is more limited than the other. But we will continue to build our model based on this, because the solution that Nicole has given us creates more problems than it actually solves. Let's make some adjustments to our model. Like Nicole said, we can't see as far horizontally as vertical, so we'll change our bubble of sight here to look more like this. We now have sort of an oval of sight, where we can see much further vertically than we can horizontally. This new model has solved one problem, that we can now see things that are directly above us, even if we can't see things that are horizontally next to us. Of course, this doesn't entirely solve the problem, as we don't just see celestial bodies directly above us, but we see them in all sorts of angles in between. Therefore, we need another explanation in order to figure out why we can see the celestial bodies. But worry not, Nicole has something up her sleeve to explain this.
The heavens are pictured down to meet the human eye, and no man can possibly see beyond his eyesight's range within his limited area. The heavens sink down to his horizon, and consequently the heavenly lights in motion appear in a dome as though moving above his head. And wherever the field of motion of the heavenly lights may be, whether far or near above, they are reflected down the atmosphere to each human eye, and they appear within the eye's own bounds according to their located positions on the earth or sea.
Celestial bodies are projected down to us. Fine, just add it to the model, why not? Do you want to know how they're projected down to us?
In the above diagram, let A represent the sun, B a magnifying glass. Those rays which fall vertically on the glass B pass and are converged at point C. This experiment can be tried any day when there is sunshine, and if the converging rays are focused on a piece of paper, as at C, the focused image of the sun will be seen and it will set fire to the paper. In the same way, the sunlight is focused in the atmosphere, and that which we see is a focused image borne by sun rays in the air in harmony with the eye's nature.
Lenses. Fucking lenses. Flat earthers. A lens is not magic. A lens cannot do all the things that you want it to do. Lenses are not some magical device. Alright, whatever. We'll add it to the model. Before we talk about why this model is complete nonsense, let's take a journey into some of the other stupid things that Nicole has to say. Because this model is cobbled together from excuses, special pleading, and ad hoc explanations, Nicole has to say some ridiculous stuff to back it up.
In every position, on earth or on sea, a man is under the same conditions. His eye-formed canopy or tent is ever over him, and if he moves a few yards or 100 miles, he can never extend the limits of his own bounds, determined by his own eye and the limitations of light. The laws controlling these conditions are fixed. The sun rises prospectively into the horizon of the eastern atmosphere limits of each man's eye-formed bounds. This diagram was taken from observation for the author by a scientist. For short distances, light travels in straight lines, but for very long distances of thousands of miles, it travels in great curves. For instance, mountains look much nearer before rain than after it. The sun and moon and stars were made to light and warm this, the only world, and no other world has ever been discovered by astronomers.
And that right there is the intellect we are working with. Why don't we take a look at the model that Nicole has given us and some of the implications that this model has. The first big problem that we have is the distance to which we can see. This number is gonna forever be mysterious. No flat earther will ever be able to tell you how far we can see. That's why Nicole has to talk about humidities in the air in order to explain away how far we can see. As I said earlier, most of the time flat earthers will place the distance that we can see at around 30 miles. The reason for this has to do with the height of most buildings. If you were to go find a small town in the middle of Kansas and drive away from it, you would notice that you would stop being able to see this town at a very short distance, probably only a few miles. However, you can still see part of Chicago at 50 miles away. The reason that this happened is because Chicago has taller buildings than little towns in Kansas. This discrepancy in how far away a person can see is not accounted for by this model. This is why Nicole's model talks about humidities and vapors in the airs. The article is intentionally written this way in order to avoid having to create a precise way in which we can measure how far a person can see. They even talk about how these factors are innumerable. And again, they try to avoid actually having a predictable model that might actually be able to tell you how far you can see. Of course, the problems don't stop here. In Nicole's model, distant objects should simply pop out of view once we have hit this imaginary limit of our eyesight. However, this isn't how it works in real life. In reality, distant objects start to disappear from the bottom up. This is a phenomenon that has been well recorded throughout history, and there are modern videos that let you see this. We have no instance in where all of a sudden a distant object simply pops out of view. This problem of distance is only compounded as we move upwards. Remember how earlier I said that we had a vision circle? I wanted to point this out because if vision is restricted in all directions, then as we move upwards we should be able to see less. Because you can only see so far horizontally, as Nicole has already explained to us, as we move upward, this restriction would continue. Therefore, as we move up, we wouldn't be able to see as far, because we would still have to look through all the humidities in order to see distant objects, and these humidities restrict our vision. We would have to be looking through just as much humidities higher up as we would lower down, if not more. Let's talk about the sun, the moon, and the stars. These celestial objects are very far away, regardless of whether you accept the flat Earth model of thousands of miles or the standard model of millions of miles. These objects are far away. In order to excuse why we can see these distant objects, we changed our vision circle to a vision oval. But when we did this, there's still a problem. By extending our view distance vertically and shrinking it horizontally, we have made it more likely to see the sun, the moon, and the stars when they are directly above us, but less likely to see them when they are in front of us. When the sun and the moon are setting or rising, they are far beyond our vision oval. Somehow, the light from these objects must be getting to us from the horizon. And for those flat earthers who want to tell me that we are not looking at the real sun, but a projection of the sun, this projection is still sending light to us from the horizon. We know this by making a few simple observations. First, we have elongated shadows during sunrise and sunset. In order to create these shadows, the light must be coming to us parallel to the ground. Furthermore, we have observed mountains casting shadows on clouds. The light must be coming from behind and below the mountains in order to make this possible. How perspective can magically bend light to make it look like the light is coming from below the clouds while the source of the light is above the clouds is another flat earth conundrum, one that cannot be tackled in this video. So now we have sun rays that leave the sun but fail to arrive at us because of our magical sight barrier, and so we must use the Globetard's greatest enemy, the magnifying glass. According to Nicole, this magical magnifying glass allows light to magically penetrate our magical sight barrier. The first question to ask is, why does it only work on the sun? Why isn't light reflected off of buildings affected by this magical magnifying glass? Hell, why isn't sunlight reflected off the windows of skyscrapers affected by this magical magnifying glass? The magical magnifying glass doesn't just ignore buildings, it also makes them transparent. If we have light traveling to us parallel to the ground, as we'd already established, then this light will be inevitably blocked by buildings, mountains, etc. This means that all sunsets must therefore have the silhouette of whatever is in front of them. All sunsets should have the outlines of mountains, regardless of how far away the mountains are. You can say that these mountains are too far, past our eyesight barrier, but if you're going to claim that the magical magnifying glass can push this light to the observer, then you can't ignore that things will get in the way. Yet somehow, we don't always see the outline of distant mountains. I'm sure there's an excuse for this too, and this model will continue to grow, becoming more complex while providing no answers. This is what happens when you start at your conclusion, and then try to duct tape your model together to support your conclusion. This model is nonsense, and so will every other model created to try to prop up the nonsensical notion that the Earth is flat.